achieved. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and in this edition of the show, we're going to be taking a look at UFC on Fuel TV 4, Munoz versus Weidman, which takes place on Wednesday, July 11th, 2012, from the HP Pavilion in San Jose, California. I'm breaking down, I'm going to pass actually on 3 fights because we have such a huge fight week coming up. We have the UFC on Fuel TV fight, and then the following Saturday, Strikeforce Rockhold versus Kennedy, which is a full lineup including 2 title fights, and I'll do a prediction show for that a little bit later on. I'll get that posted. Now, before getting into my predictions for this event, UFC 148 just took place. I didn't do very well. I went 4-6 overall. The bet pack was wasn't a success. Let's not sugarcoat it. What I'm going to do for that is there are 2 events coming up. I'm going to package them both together. $5. You get both events for $10 total. So I'll give you 2 events for the price of one. I'll post them both the UFC and Strikeforce events, so have at her there. And hopefully we turn things around again. I apologize. It was a rough night, a couple odd things happening. Now, I'm sure everyone's still talking about the Anderson Silva, Chael Sonnen finish. Certainly some controversial things. I think they need to be looked at. First and foremost, the shoulder shrug at the weigh-ins. I don't want to sound overly critical, but I think if things had been reversed and Chael had done that to Anderson Silva, there would have been a lot more uproar and it would have been looked upon a lot closer and something might have happened. So that's number 1. Number 2, Anderson Silva greases up. He does it every single fight. Finally, Eve Levine, of all people, called him on it and toweled him off. But either way, that's you're attempting to cheat and hoping you don't get caught. Again, that should be addressed. Number 3, he grabbed the shorts for a good portion of time, and again, people might want to write that off, but when you look at it, it's fairly significant when he does it, especially when you're taking on a wrestler who's looking to take you down. You grab one of those shorts, gain some extra leverage, and then gain the advantage as a result of an illegal move. And finally, that knee, I've watched several videos and angles of it. It looks like the direct impact of the knee does hit him in the chest, but it also looks like part of his leg, maybe the thigh, which that's not really illegal, it's not a knee, does make contact with Chael's head. Either way, I'm sure Chael will have something to say about it later on. We'll hear about it. It'll be analyzed, and either way, Anderson Silva still has the title, and that's where we go forth from UFC 148. Before we get into this, as always, thank you very much to all of my sponsors for hosting and posting my videos. You can check all those links out over at kamikazeoverdrive.net. As I said, my bet pack, it's a 2-for-1 deal this time based on my UFC 148 performance. And Joe Caporelli and Joel Richer are going to be posting their predictions as well for the upcoming events at kamikazeoverdrive.net, so please check them out. And it is now time to get into my first set of predictions. We're going to kick things off in the UFC's newly formed flyweight division with a preliminary matchup between Chris Kamikaze Carriasso, 13-3-0, taking on Josh Taz Ferguson, 7-4-0. Both guys dropping down from the bantamweight division, but they have past experience fighting at 125 pounds. Carriasso has a pretty impressive run in the UFC going so far. He's 3-1 overall with his lone loss, a split decision, and now top contender Michael McDonald. He's currently riding a 2-fight winning streak with decision wins over Von Lee and Takeo Mizugaki. Well, Josh Ferguson lost his UFC debut via submission in the 3rd round against Roland Delorme. Taking a quick look at their win totals. Ferguson, all 8 of his wins have come by submission. He's also been submitted twice, of course, as I said, against Delorme, and his 2 losses by decision. Well, Carriasso, not a big finisher. 2 wins by knockout, 2 wins by submission, 9 wins by decision. He's lost in each category once as well. The guy's a grinder. I think this will be a very interesting matchup. I like Carriasso. He's a solid veteran, and he's the type of guy doesn't do anything flashy. He has decent groundwork, and he just continues to work on guys and keep pushing through. And despite Ferguson's good submission skills, I don't see him submitting Chris Carriasso. So in this fight, I'm going to take Chris Carriasso to grind out Josh Ferguson, wear him number 3 rounds. So my prediction is Chris Kamikaze Carriasso to defeat Josh Ferguson by decision. We move to our second preliminary prediction of the evening in the UFC's bantamweight division as Damasio, the Angel of Death Page, 12-7-0, battles Bruce Leroy, Alex Caceres, 6-5-0. Damasio Page 0-2 to start his UFC career, currently riding a 3-fight losing streak, while Caceres is coming off a loss. Split decision loss to Edwin Figueroa. In my opinion, the loser of this fight will be probably looking for employment elsewhere, even though the division is thin, and if they don't get fired, that's what will save them either way. The loser of this fight their back will be against the wall. I thought Caceres looked very good. Looked very good against Cole Escobedo. He looked very good against Edwin Figueroa. He lost on a split decision because he lost 2 points in 1 round after 2 consecutive low blows against his opponent. I think that came back to cost him. I think he could have still got the decision. Judges nod despite losing those 2 points. Big number that stands out for me is Damacio Page. Of his 7 career losses, 6 by submission, including 3 in a row to Brad Pickett, Brian Bowles, Demetrius Johnson, all very good grapplers. Caceres has been showing us a lot with his ground game. He attempted 7 submissions against Edwin Figueroa, and even though he didn't finish, he certainly had the capabilities. He's a long, lengthy fighter, which gives him some opportunities on the ground. And of course, we saw against Jimmy Hedis, very capable of fighting, a very talented grappler in Hedis on the mat as well. On the feet, Page, on the ground, Page is very good with his submissions, so he's certainly going to be interesting if he goes to the ground. On the feet, Page is an aggressive, explosive striker, but he has a tendency to start fast and fade, and his conditioning certainly hurts him. And some significant numbers that stand out to me physically anyway. Caceres will have a 4-inch height advantage and a 7-inch reach advantage, which should help him on the feet. And his kicks are very effective at keeping distance. And the way I see this fight going down is Caceres will wait for Page to tire himself out, eventually tie him out, drag him to the mat. And I've got Alex Caceres defeating Damacio Page by submission. We move to the main card of the evening, and we start off in the lightweight division as 16-6-0 Rafael Dos Anjos battles fellow 16-6-0 Anthony the Assassin Njokuani. Taking a look at Dos Anjos, he's coming off a submission victory over Kamal Shalroos, while Anthony Njokuani, a decision win over John Makdessi at UFC 145. Winner of this fight takes another step up the rankings in the lightweight division. I'm very much looking forward to this matchup. I know it's not a high-profile fight for a lot of people, but it should be an excellent battle. As far as win totals are concerned, it's certainly a tale of 2 different situations. Dos Anjos, a BJJ black belt, 8 of his 16 career wins have come by submission. Well, for Anthony Njokuani, 8 of his wins, and he's a Muay Thai striker, 8 of his wins have come by knockout, not shocking there. Now, Dos Anjos has significantly improved his striking. Against Shalroos, before he submitted him, he hurt him and dropped him badly with his striking. A couple fights prior, something I called, he knocked out George Soteropoulos, which was also quite impressive. Physically, how these two guys stack up, Njokuani's going to have a 3-inch height advantage, which could be significant, and he's going to add to that with a 4.5-inch reach advantage. So if this fight stays standing, that favors the Muay Thai striker very much so. It's in Dos Anjos' best interest to take his opponent to the mat here. I don't know if that's at all possible. You look at Njokuani, he only fought Danny Castillo, and yes, Castillo took that fight on short notice, but Castillo's a very powerful wrestler, and he did take Njokuani down 6 times, but it took him 18 attempts, and he really had to work hard, and he really struggled to keep Njokuani there for any prolonged period of time. And now Anthony Njokuani has lost 3 of his total fights by submission, which is certainly a concern if Dos Anjos gets him down, but I struggle to see he's going to get him there. Takedown accuracy overall, Dos Anjos has only averages 33%, lands 33% of his overall takedowns, while Njokuani defends almost 60% they're thrown his way, so certainly favoring Njokuani with those numbers to keep the fight standing. Either way, I think that Dos Anjos is a tough dude. I think he's going to struggle to get Njokuani to the mat. As long as Anthony Njokuani keeps within himself, keeps it focused, and maintains a very calm but pressured attack and doesn't make a lot of mistakes. We return back to UFC's bantamweight division for a matchup of 2 fighters on the rise. Ultimate Fighter finals, TJ Dillashaw 6-1 takes on Britain's own Von Lee 12-7-1. Dillashaw is coming off a decisive decision victory over YL Watson, while Von Lee in an upset at UFC 144, an upset you heard first here at Kamikaze Overdrive. He submitted Kid Yamamoto. He paid better than 4-1. You're welcome if you bet on Von Lee that night, because I certainly did. You look at TJ Dillashaw, the guy is tailor-made for this wrestling type of attack. He's an NCAA Division I wrestler. He trains at a Team Alpha Male with guys like Faber, Benavidez, Mendez. He fits that role very well. And against YL Watson, he had excellent takedowns, excellent top control. The guy's got a very solid pace. We saw it on The Ultimate Fighter. The guy just goes and goes and puts pressure on his opponents and watches them either break or just cave in underneath of him. Overall, he's got 1 win by knockout, a pair of wins by submission, and 2 wins by decision. So he only has 6 professional fights under his belt. So experience-wise, he doesn't have a ton there. Von Lee, on the other hand, he's a British fighter, born in Birmingham, England, but he's a BJJ black belt, which is something you don't normally expect to see coming out of that way. Of his 12 career victories, he does have 4 wins by knockout, but the biggest total is 7 wins by submission, which is impressive. He has some big fight experience. He battled Brad Pickett back in Cage Rage. He lost by knockout in that fight. And of course, he has 2 fights in the UFC. His split decision loss against Chris Carriasso, and of course the aforementioned win over Kid Yamamoto. I don't know what Von Lee's situation is. I almost wouldn't mind seeing him try and drop down to flyweight. I think he'd be an immediate contender at that division, but he's done very well so far in the UFC. Big number stands out to me despite being a black belt. He has lost the majority of his fights by decision or by submission, 4 in total. which tells me he is vulnerable on the ground if he gets it there. In his fight with Chris Carriasso, he started off well, but when Carriasso in the second half started to take him down and grind him out, that's where Von Lee lost that fight, and I foresee something like that happening for a longer period of time here. TJ Dillashaw, as I said, fantastic wrestler, excellent top control, works very hard. I see his work rate and his wrestling simply being too much for Von Lee, and unless Lee is able to catch him from the bottom, or possibly do what John Dodson did, and catch him with a quick shot in the early exchanges, I can't see Von Lee winning this fight, even though I like Von Lee a lot. And it's disappointing to see these two guys matched up because I know one of them has to lose. But based on what I've seen, I have to go with TJ Dillashaw, so my prediction is TJ Dillashaw to defeat Von Lee by decision. All right, now we move up a couple weight classes to the middleweight division as Carlos Vemola, 10-2-0, battles Francis Limitless Carmont, 18-7-0. France versus Vemola, originally from the Czech Republic, training out of London, England now, so France versus England in that sense. Taking a look at what they've done recently, Vemola 2-2 in the UFC. He's coming off a submission victory over Mike Macenzio in his middleweight debut, and it's impressive because this guy has fought at heavyweight in his debut, moved down for a pair of fights at light heavyweight, and now moving to middleweight. And I'll talk about his performance in his last fight shortly. Francis Carmont, on the other hand, 2-0 in the UFC, defeated Chris Camozzi via decision back at UFC 137 in his debut. Followed up with a submission win over Magnus Sennenblad at UFC on Fuel TV, Gustafsson versus Silva. Francis Carmont is coming out of the TriStar Gym with George St. Pierre, Faraz Sabi, and the rest of the crew over there. So he's going to be well trained, and he's going to need to have to deal with the wrestling of Carlos Vemola, a six-time national champion of freestyle wrestling in the Czech Republic. So the guy is versed in the ground game. But the biggest thing with Vemola is his best performance was his TKO win over Seth Petrozelli. He lost to John Madsen in his debut. Against Ronnie Marks, he got absolutely ragdolled from start to finish by Marks, who's a black belt, and turned the table on him, putting Vemola on his back. Overall, just, Vemola had nothing for him. And against Mike Macenzio, who lost that fight by submission a minute in the second round, Macenzio dominated the first round. Won the striking exchanges, won the grappling exchanges. Vemola did not look that good. And it wasn't until Macenzio made a mistake in the second round that Vemola was able to hop on, slap on the rear naked choke, and choke out Macenzio, which was disappointing for Mike because he fought an excellent fight there, and advantageous for Vemola to take advantage of the opportunities you get. Francis Carmont, on the other hand, the guy to me looks very good. He's a beast, physically speaking. He hits hard. He's very physical. He works the ground game fairly well as overall training with the guys he trains with. That's not surprising. He averages 3.46 takedowns per fight, 63% takedown accuracy, and no one's been able to take him off his feet yet in the UFC. Now, against Magnus Sennenblad, early on, he did have his struggles a little bit. Sennenblad got a couple of advantageous positions. Carmont was able to power out of them and eventually get things back under control. The biggest thing that stands out for me in this matchup is I was very concerned with the way Carlos Vemola reacted to getting hit by Mike Macenzio. He kind of covered up, backed up. He did not show great poise under pressure in those situations. Vemola's striking is very suspect, and even though he's a national wrestling champion, you don't always know how that translates to MMA, and I don't think it's translated as well as people expected it to. Either way, I don't think he's as good as originally made out to be, especially when he crushed Petrozelli. I think Carmont's the real deal. He's looked good so far. This will be a nice test to see where he stands in the division and where he stands in his career. Either way, Carmont has the advantage with the striking, and depending on how far Vemola can go, the guy's a beast of a man, but he cuts a lot of weight, and he's lost some muscle mass getting down to middleweight as well. It'll be interesting to see how he matches up physically with Carmont, especially in the strength department. Either way, I like what Carmont brings to the table. I like his grappling. I like his physical nature. I like the gym he trains at with TriStar. They should have him ready for his opponent's attack in this one. So I'm going to take Francis Carmont to defeat Carlos Vemola, and I'm going to take Carmont to win this fight by TKO. All right, we move to the UFC's welterweight division. As a former UFC middleweight, Aaron A-Train Simpson, 10-3-0, makes his divisional debut against returning UFC veteran 11-1 Kenny Robertson. Aaron Simpson's coming off a split decision loss against Ronnie Marks. Prior to that, he had a 3-fight winning streak with wins over Mario Miranda, Brad Tavares, and Eric Schaefer, all by decision. He has won the majority of his fights by knockout at 6. Kenny Robertson, on the other hand, 11-1. Most of his wins have come by submission. 7. His last fight was a knockout, spinning back fist victory over Lucio Linares outside of the UFC. Prior to that, he suffered his lone career loss at UFC 126 to Mike Pierce. That was by TKO. Now, Aaron Simpson, the biggest thing for this fight, Aaron Simpson, he's 37 years old. He's making that 15-pound weight cut from middleweight down to welterweight, and that has to be a concern. If things go well, the weight cut goes well, and things translate, he might lose a little bit of speed, but his strength, his power, and his wrestling should translate very well to this division. He should match up with some guys. Originally, this was supposed to be, I believe, Aaron Simpson versus John Fitch type of fight where Simpson wins, he's right in the hunt right away. Either way, very curious to see how Aaron Simpson handles this. Kenny Robertson, I said most of his wins have come by submission. I don't see him submitting Aaron Simpson. And I don't know if I wasn't impressed with his striking. I watched his last fight. Even though he won by spinning back fist, it's not. I just didn't get the vibe that he's the type of guy who's going to go out and win a fight on the basis of his striking against anybody else who's a competent striker. I just see Aaron Simpson simply having too much for him on the ground. And Simpson's striking, as I said, has been improving. He hits very hard. Again, the weight cut's a concern, but overall, I'm going to go with Aaron Simpson to win this fight, and I think he's going to grind this one out. So Aaron Simpson defeats Kenny Robertson by decision. All right, now we move to the co-main event of the evening, the UFC's lightweight division, and hold on to your hats, folks, because this fight might not last long, but it's going to be entertaining. We have, on one side of the cage, James Te Huna, 16-5-0, taking on the returning Mexicutioner Joey Beltran, 14-7-0. Beltran, a former UFC heavyweight. His run in the UFC, let me total it up, 3 wins, 4 losses, all in the heavyweight division. He stepped out of the company for 1 fight to make his light heavyweight debut, a much smarter weight class for his body shape and size, and he picked up a win by decision. And of course, this fight was originally supposed to be James Te Huna versus Brandon Vera. Injury struck. Vera got moved to face Shogun on the next UFC on Fox, and Joey Beltran quickly got the call. He didn't expect to be back this quickly, but either way, he'll take it. He's battling James Te Huna. Te Huna, on the other hand, he's on a 2-fight winning streak. He knocked out Aaron Rosa by TKO, a guy Joey Beltran also beat by TKO. Prior to that, he stopped Ricardo Romero in only 47 seconds. His lone loss in the promotion was a submission loss against rising star Alexander Gustafsson. You know, the guy, James Te Huna, is a beast. He also has victories. A knockout victory over Igor Pokrayets, and we saw how tough Pokrayets is to put away. Overall, these two guys combined for 21 career knockouts, with Beltran suffering the only loss by knockout, which was to LeVar Johnson. On the ground, Beltran's 1-1 in submission fights, 1 win, 1 loss. Well, James Te Huna a little more extensive, 3 wins by submission, 5 losses by submission. I don't anticipate this fight's going to the ground unless somebody gets hurt and, you know, they drop down for some ground and pound. There will be no submissions in this fight. Watch it be a submission to come back and bite me. But these two are going to stand and trade, and eventually one of them is going to fall. And you know what? James Te Huna, his conditioning is a little bit of a question mark. We saw against Alexander Gustafsson what happened in that fight. His last 2 fights haven't gone past the 2.5-minute mark of the first round. But his win over Pokrayets did go deep into the 3rd round and picked up a victory there, which was impressive. Joey Beltran's the type of guy you saw against Pat Barry. He takes a beating and just stands in front of you and just keeps coming at you. He's not the most talented guy. He got beat by Pat Barry, he got beat by Matt Mitrione, he got beat by Stipe Miocic. But he certainly is the type of guy whose game he's always ready to fight. Now against LeVar Johnson, Johnson got him against the cage and started wailing on him, put the big power to him, and at that point Beltran eventually crumpled, something he doesn't want to, he does a situation he wanted to avoid, and that's why he got out of the heavyweight division. But he's taking on one of the very much bigger and physically demanding light heavyweights in James Te Huna. Either way, this should be an entertaining fight. I like what Te Huna brings. He's a more technical fighter. He hits very hard. And I think he's going to wind up defeating Joey Beltran here. So I'm going to take James Te Huna to defeat Joey Beltran in a very entertaining bout, and he's going to do it by knockout. So we now move to the UFC's middleweight division for the main event of the evening, as Mark, the Filipino wrecking machine, 12-2-0, battles the undefeated All-American Chris Weidman, 8-0, and the winner of this fight certainly is in title contention, the title contention discussion. And looking at Mark Munoz, he's in a 4-fight winning streak. He's 7-2 overall in the UFC. He debuted with a loss. That means he's won 6 of his last 7 fights, with his only loss coming to former title challenger Yushin Okami. Big thing with Mark Munoz, the guy's 34 years of age, so he has to recognize that his window to get title shots, or to get a title shot, has to be closing, because he's only going to compete at the top level for I would say 1 to 2, maybe 3 more years, maybe more, because he doesn't have the huge mileage. There's only 14 fights total in his career. But if he loses this fight to Chris Weidman, he takes a couple steps back, and he's going to have to fight some of the other up-and-coming fighters to get back to where he is right now. Chris Weidman, on the other hand, 28 years of age. A lot of people feel this guy is the future champion. I don't want to see him get a shot too quickly. If he wins this matchup, I'd still like to see him fight at least twice more at this level before going on to challenge for the title. Taking a look at their numbers, Munoz has won the majority of his fights by knockout, 6. He doesn't have great striking technique, but he has that ridiculous Donkey Kong power, as we saw him stop Chris Lee, and we saw him stop Kendall Grove with big shots. But he also caught CB Dollaway with a big punch and knocked him out, so if he catches you, you're going to sleep. Chris Weidman, on the other hand, 2 wins by knockout, 3 by sub. Works the submissions with Matt Serra. Works the striking with Ray Longo. Good prospect coming up. Physically, as I already talked about the age, Weidman's going to have 2 inches of height at 6'2" to 6 foot, but more significantly, a 7-inch reach advantage over Mark Munoz. So Weidman, certainly that will be to his benefit should the fight remain standing. Head-to-head advantages, striking technique, Weidman's improving. I like what he does. He throws some kicks. He showed he could hold his own against a very good striker in Alessio Sakara in his debut. You know, I'm impressed with what he does, and I expect more out of him in this fight. Flip the coin, striking power goes to Mark Munoz. I've already talked about how devastating he can be. Speed, Weidman. Wrestling and submissions, I go to Weidman, and I'll talk about those briefly. Cardio, I'm going to give the nod back to Munoz in that sense. Weidman didn't have the greatest cardio showing against Damian Maia, but again, he took the fight on short notice, so you have to wonder how much of a camp he really had. And he got tired, but again, you know, there was complicating issues there either way. Fightmetric.com, interesting stats. Mark Munoz, NCAA Division I wrestler, BJJ purple belt, but he only completes 23% of his takedowns. There's a lot of question marks about how effective Munoz's wrestling is. Against Chris Lieben, he really struggled to get Lieben to the ground with regularity. He even got taken down a couple times. When he does get you there, he is effective at wearing you out. He does a nice job in the clinch. He leans on guys. He beats them up. He takes away their conditioning, and eventually he has a lot of success stopping them with his power. Takedown defense, 61%. That'll be tested here. He averages 2.45 takedowns per fight. Chris Weidman, on the other hand, 69% takedown accuracy. If he takes you down, he attempts it, he's probably taking you down, and he averages just short of 4.5 takedowns per fight. Very impressive. What's even more impressive, when he takes you down, he's very effective at landing in a very good position. More often than not, similar to Josh Barnett almost, Weidman puts himself inside control, and it's hard to defend a guy if he's already starting off in a better position than what you expected, and that's what Weidman does a lot. His takedown defense, 100%. So if Mark Munoz is going to implement the greatest aspect of his game, he'll have to be the first guy in 5 fights to take Weidman down and keep him there. Both guys on the ground, BJJ purple belts. Both guys NCAA Division I wrestlers. Again, I said I give the nod to Weidman. His submission game, he's got some submission grappling experience, and I give him the edge there. We know Munoz is working with the Black House guys, so certainly he's picked up some tricks from that camp. Either way, it should be interesting. Looking at some of their major strengths, as I talked about the submission, excellent takedowns of Weidman, powerful ground and pound for Mark Munoz. He has that big, powerful right hand. He does a good job in the clinch as well, beating guys up, which is, as equally as effective. Some of Mark Munoz's weakness is submission defense. Now, he's never been submitted, actually, but I've seen several times where he's put himself in a position to be submitted. Chris Lieben locked up a couple submission attempts. Kendall Grove had him in a nasty one as well. Certainly something, area of concern. And takedowns as well. Aaron Simpson completed 5 takedowns against him. Okami landed 1. Dalloway landed 1. Lieben even put him on his back twice. Nick Catone had 3 takedowns. So Munoz is vulnerable to being taken down. It's not something you want to hear against a guy like Chris Weidman. In Munoz's fight against Okami, his last loss, because Munoz wasn't able to work his wrestling the way he usually does, he struggled. Now, his striking has come a long way, but if he can't get his takedowns on Weidman, he's going to be forced to rely to his striking, and he's very wild with his striking, and it's not something I think you want to rely upon in that situation. One thing I like is, for Weidman, is I like his athleticism. He is green. He's got experience, and it's building, but he's very athletic. He's the type of guy who's going to go out and work hard. He's going to improve every fight, and we already saw what he did with the NCAA level and MMA. He's got endless potential as far as I'm concerned. And as long as his conditioning isn't a major issue, as we saw against Maia, and that was just a fact of taking the fight on short notice, the guy has a lot going for him. I like Mark Munoz's physicality, but I think Chris Weidman has some significant edges that will be the difference. I think the wrestling, the submissions are a threat. And I'm going to take Chris Weidman to defeat Mark Munoz by submission and move himself one step closer to a potential shot at the UFC's middleweight title. So those are my predictions for UFC on Fuel TV 4. You can also check out Joe Caporale and Joel Richet's predictions over at KamikazeOverdrive.net. The bet packs will be available. It's 2 for 1, as I said. You buy the UFC on Fuel TV bet pack, and you will get the Strikeforce bet pack. $10 for the 2 for 1, so please check them out again. If I don't do well on this one, the UFC 149 bet pack will be 100% free. I guarantee you on that one. So again, anybody who buys this bet pack, if it does not do well, you'll be getting the UFC 149 bet pack free of charge. Strikeforce event also coming up this weekend. Next weekend it should be fantastic. I definitely look forward to seeing that, and I'll be doing my predictions as soon as I possibly can to get that video up and running. Thank you very much for listening for supporting Kamikaze Overdrive. I greatly appreciate it, and I will see you back here in a very short period of time.